Okay, we'll start from here. So we discussed last class how to solve these equations to get these coefficients a1, b1, c1, a2, b2, c2, etc. Once you get the coefficient, what is the importance of that coefficient, that we will discuss now. So why we need to find out this coefficient? Because if you want, suppose you are having an interpolation or your data like this. Okay, so this point is, suppose this point is 15 and this point is some 18. Okay, so okay, we'll consider first the linear interpolation direct method. So what we have to do here is that, suppose you are having x1 and y1 values, x2 and y2 points as shown in figure, these 2 points. Okay, and you need to find out any other points in between these two. So that is your interpolation. So you will be having y1 equal to a0 plus a1x and y2 equal to a0 plus a1x2, because you are having this line and you are representing it by using equation, linear equation. So that is a0 plus a1x equal to y1 first value, and if you are having x2, then you will be having y2, a0 plus a1x2 equal to y2. So this is direct method of representing each point by a linear equation, line equation. So then we have to consider the matrix. So here we have to concentrate. So we have first value 1, that is that is the x value at this point corresponding to the variable. We have 1, so that is what we have written here. Then we have x1, so that is here, and then we have again 1 here, so this is this one, and next one is x2. So this into a0 a1, that is this matrix, will be your y1 and y2, this column matrix. Is that okay? So because when you are multiplying, this will come as 1 into a0 plus x1 into a1 will be equal to y1. So you have to write like this. Then you consider an example. If you are having 15 and 18 instead of x1 and y1, sorry, x1 and x2, then you have y1 and y2 as 10 and 18. So then we can write the matrix representation like this, as in the previous case. Then this divided by is not there. Okay, so this is just a0 a1, a column matrix. So you can erase this, this is not there. Okay, so a0 and a1, and you will be having this kind of matrix representation with these values. So what we are representing here is that this term, this is inverse. Okay, so this one is inverse of this matrix. So if you take inverse of this matrix and you multiply with this matrix, that is matrix multiplication. If you do matrix multiplication, then you will get these coefficients a0 and a1. Very simple mathematics, linear algebra. Then if you consider that, then we can find out what is the value at y equal to y of 16, that is x equal to 16. Value of y at x equal to 16, that is in between these two. So around this point we have to find out what is the value. So here we will be having 17, then this is 16. So what is the value at x equal to 16, that we have to find out. So from this we will get what is a0 and a1. Okay, from here we get what is a0 and a1, and from that, suppose you got a0 and a1 from this equation. After calculating this, we will be getting a column matrix like this, and you will getting a0 here and a1 here. So we can calculate what is a0 and a1. Now we can write what is a0 plus a1 x equal to your first y value, that is your 10. Okay, This is your time. Now instead of x, what you have to substitute? Instead of x, you have to substitute 16. Here, if you are having a0 and a1, then instead of x, we can find out what is the value of a0 and a1 here, and substitute instead of in this equation a0 and a1, and x you substitute 16. Then what is the y value that you can get? Okay, this is how we do with the matrix in all the cases. But in quadratic case, we have a0 x square. So we have different kind of matrix. We will be having different kind of matrix, a little more complicated matrix we will be having, and that will be multiplied with your a0 a1 b1 c1 a2 b2 c2 etc., all the unknowns in this column, and you will be having your y column, that is y0 y1 y2 etc. up to yn. Okay, so similarly you will be having here x0 square plus, for quadratic case I am saying, so you will be having x0 square, then you will be having x0, then you will be having 1, then 0 0 0, then next also you will be having x1 square x1, and then 1 0 0 0. So if you multiply this, then you will get a0 x square plus b1 x0 plus c1, this one, equal to your y0, first element. Similarly, you had to write all these equation expression in your equations, the variables, and multiplied with this coefficient, you will get y value. And if you take the inverse of this matrix and take matrix multiplication with your y matrix, you will get all this coefficient. Then if once you get all these coefficient, then you can find out all other data points. For example, if your first spline line is like this, this is in between x0 and x1, for example, and you got some values. Suppose this is your y0 is equal to 100 and 180, for example. Then you can say clearly, if you found out what is this a0 a1 b1 c1, then suppose your a1 x square x0 square, that is x0 square plus b1 x0 plus c1 equal to, in this case we will be having 100. Then by using this matrix linear algebra, then we can calculate what is a1 b1 c1. Then if you know what is a1 b1 c1 here, a1 b1 c1, then you can substitute x value, any x value in between these two, because this representing your spline, first spline s1. So any value which is in this spline, within this range, that is within x0 and x1, so any value which is greater than x0 but less than x1, you can calculate the y value easily. Okay, so under this condition, that is in the, which means that in first spline, if you want to calculate any y value, you can use this a1 b1 and c1, then put that x value in this instead of x0, then you can calculate what is the y value coming. Similarly, if you want to use the second spline, okay, s2, then you will be having, you have to find out what is the coefficient of a2 b2 and c2 for that, and you can, if you have this coefficient, then you can directly calculate what is a2 x square plus b2 x plus c2 equal to, for any data point here in between this spline. So in that way we can find out what all the values in these splines, different splines. So this is the basic idea, and we can find out one video that I will give you this link, and you can find out a different method to solve in by using Python code.